So this is one of my all-time favorite people. Estelle Poire and I are friends. We go back now quite a while. And Estelle has been an influence on a lot of my thinking, and I think I on hers too. And it's a great connection and a really nice friendship. I want to update myself, and I want to share this with all my listeners because Estelle is always improving what she's focused on, which is clutter. And if clutter doesn't sound very interesting to you, it's because you haven't faced up to how much you have. And that's what I think a lot of people realize, that clutter is a big problem in their lives. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, Estelle, it's always fun to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
So we
I'm very
started
happy about that.
recently, we started talking a little bit about Jay Shetty. And Jay Shetty is trained as a Buddhist monk. He's now something of a celebrity interviewer and a really interesting guy, very gentle, a gentle man, as I like to say, and a gentleman, and very wise beyond his years. But we started to talk the other day about clutter, and what he talks about with clutter is a spiritual clutter. Can you talk a little bit about that, and also talk a little bit about where you are and what you do while you answer that? That gives you something to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Estelle. I'm super French and also bilingual. So clutter is my life's mission. And yeah, one thing I could say is, or actually a question I could ask is, did you know, or actually, do you know how much stuff the average North American home has? Do you know what the number is?
You mean stuff like pounds,
Exactly.
or how do we measure?
Objects. Objects.
Oh,
Objects.
number of objects?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Is there who took the time to count? That's what I want to know.
That is a very good question. And you see somebody that has almost no clutter or maybe no clutter at all. They are quite aware of everything that's in their home. And the number is an average of 300,000 objects. That's unbelievable. So imagine if you have an average of 300,000 objects. Do you think that you remember all the things that you have? Probably not. And do you remember all the feelings and all the sadness or the frustration or the happiness that is attached to all these objects?
Yeah,
Probably not.
yeah, not at all. No, I know that when I get rid of things, I feel better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you see, there's before we got together today to talk, I thought I should talk about the other side of the coin or the medal. I don't know if I'm translating that properly. I used to work years ago, many years ago. I was working in the oil patch and in the northern Alberta. And so I was with a group of gals and we were cleaning rooms in camps. And people would say, "Oh, Estelle, she's the organized one." And I always wanted to be the best one and to do the best work. And I was known for that. I was really happy about that. But the thing is, people found me very anal with how I organize my cart. And one of my colleagues, sometimes I would have to take her cart. And the first thing I would do is, okay, you know what? This is overwhelming. This is too much. It pisses me off. It drives me nuts. It overwhelms me. So I'm going to clean, declutter, and organize her cart. I would do that. And I was proud of myself. And I thought at that time, many years ago, oh, she's going to be thankful, grateful for that. She's going to be happy. She was a very outspoken woman. Do you know where I'm going now? She was so pissed with me. She was so mad. She said, "Estelle, you need to stop doing this. I know you're probably a little OCD. You need to stop this cleaning and organizing it. I love when it's disorganized, but I love when I have a lot of things on my cart. I love it. And this is the one thing, not everybody wants to get rid of clutter. Some people want to have a lot and they just love it. And I want to respect them, but I don't understand. Do I judge them internally? Yes, I do. But I will never tell them that. Please cut that.
There are a lot of people, I think, that don't think about there's some severe, you mentioned OCD. There are people that have a mental issue that they really hang on to. It gives them a safety feeling, a safety net, or it gives them some kind of comfort that is a serious issue. That's not predominantly who you're talking to in your audience. You're talking about people that I think, from what I know, that want to be more organized, that realize that these things take time. Like me, I talk about getting rid of stuff, but I use it with clients that I talk to. I say the clean the garage idea. Walk through the garage every day, and the short version of it is, and then one day you clean it, and then you feel like everything is better. Your whole life is better. And in fact, I did that recently. We could use another cleaning of the garage again because I think there are 300,000 things in the garage here. But I think that the feeling that I got from getting rid of some stuff and giving some stuff away to people who were so excited about getting this stuff is extraordinary. Just extraordinary. Positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Imagine if we gave away all the things that a large amount of things that we have. I think even just with clothes, we would not need to buy clothes anymore. We could just exchange. And that would be so much better for the environment also.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I also I think about this too in terms of the piles of polo shirts and t-shirts and all the shirts I have. And the people that are the most successful, like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, it's right, they basically have one outfit. They might have 18 black shirts, but they don't have any choice to make in the morning. They have a uniform. And I think maybe I should get closer to that. Even if we use a variation of that and reduce what we've got, I think it's helpful if we're very busy, particularly.
Absolutely. And that's one way for them to really simplify their lives because they reduce the amount of decisions that they will take in a day, that they will make in a day, and they reserve their time slots for decisions that will move them, that will move the needle, so to speak. So I
Yeah.
feel that this is really, yeah, that's quite interesting. I actually didn't know about that, about Elon Musk and Zuckerberg.
If you think about it, I see people all the time and in these celebrity shots who are black suit men, black suit, white tie, white shirt, black tie. And I think it is so simple and so crisp from a style point of view that it's a good idea from that side as well. You're just always in good shape. Or in my world, the very waspy world, the blue blazer, it really works. It works with jeans, it works with white trousers, it works. There are certain fashion items that you can simplify. Tell us how, when you have a client, when you take them in, how does that work? What are they looking to achieve typically?
That's a really good question. My audience, and I have to say, it took me a while. I tried out a lot of different audience, and now I've got this audience that I discovered last year. And I thought this is so wonderful because these are women that want to create their new adventure, their new beginnings, whether they are maybe on the verge of getting a divorce, maybe they're a divorce, maybe they're a widow, maybe they're single, they're professional women, maybe they're still in a couple and they just feel inside of them this urge of, I feel overwhelmed with too many things. I want to create a new me. So if I want to create a new me, I need to let go. I need to let go of something. And that something is the material possessions, which no longer, they no longer fit with what I'm trying to create in my future, which I'm trying to create this beautiful future. But these material things, they don't fit and there's too much. And so I don't want to bring those in my future that I'm trying to create. This new chapter, exciting chapter of my life. And so that's what they're looking for, to create a new chapter.
Sounds very, they sound very mature, very realistic because my brand, maybe it's a little perverted, but I've heard these stories that people, when they get divorced or when they break up, they go on the rebound and they go a little crazy. And particularly when I was living in New York City, and people would go on rebound really, they become really, their behavior was really bad, you know, and they would live out what they thought was a fantasy world. But it sounds like that not everybody's in that situation. Maybe I have matured and we've all matured. We don't do that anymore. But the idea of starting fresh, I think, is something that we fantasize about, but you're making it real.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's very true. And with going back to Jay Shetty, you were asking at the beginning of our conversation about Jay Shetty. He was talking not only about the physical clutter, the objects that are cluttering our lives, but also the the mental clutter, the emotional clutter. Imagine all our lives were, and I see it in my Declutter with Estelle virtual sessions. I see it there, and I see it with my clients. If I'm in person or in virtual, I'll see it. They have the, they spend all these years living and going through these life experiences with themselves, with other people, in their relationships, in their life experiences. And they accumulate so many things. And often we just forget about them because there's too much. We just forget about them. We put them aside. Maybe we put them in a garage or in an attic or something. We completely forget about them for whatever reason. And yeah, at some point they just feel like they want to get rid of all these things. It's just too much.
Yeah,
It's absolutely too much.
I argue that you never forget that stuff. That in the back of your
Mm.
mind, you always know that stuff is in the attic. It's like my garage idea. You always know that the garage is there and needs to be cleaned up, and you feel this weight. I should clean the garage. I should do
Yeah.
this. I had a friend a long time ago. He said, "Don't shit on yourself so much." Right? We have all these things that we know we ought to do, and they just become weights. And but the clutter, I think it seems to me that the problem people have is they don't know where to start, right? As we get older, we figure it out. I had an experience recently. A couple of things have changed in the direction I'm going, and I just went on a tear one afternoon, and I must have gotten rid of almost about a foot and a half of paper, right? And I went through, I thought, this was a bad idea. This is a good idea, but most of these are bad ideas anyway. I don't need them.
Hmm.
And the feeling of getting rid of that, and you can't tell if you look at my office now, it looks like there's nothing's changed. But the fact is, I got rid of quite a lot, and it was very relieving,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
very calming.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I had a client maybe 2 months ago with whom I worked in person, and it was so interesting. All the stuff she was trying to get rid of, it was a weight for her. But in a way, she almost forgot. It's if she didn't remember it. She did not remember anymore. And she found, oh wow, look, it was like a treasure. It was like this memory that she was bearing inside of her.
Yeah.
It's almost as if she had forgotten about that. But like you're saying, it was a weight. It was waiting on her. It was always there. It was absolutely always there.
And she was always aware of it.
Yes and no, because she did not quite remember she had this until she opened a box and she thought, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I still have that. What the hell's wrong with me? And then it all came back to her. But she
So,
knew that box was there, but specifically what's in the box, not too sure.
yeah.
But it was a big discovery, like a child that's discovering something at Christmas, a gift, or unwrapping a gift, right? A
Yeah.
little
From
bit.
Christmas past.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people don't get rid of things because in the back of our minds, we all will say, I may need this. I better
Mm-hmm.
keep it.
Absolutely.
And the reason I was able to get rid of all those papers is I said, look, I haven't looked to myself, I'm speaking. I said, you haven't looked at this in 6 months or longer.
Hmm.
Do you really think that next month it's going to suddenly become vital? No. So how much of what decluttering achieves is just reality, to making a decision to be realistic about what you need to keep.
It is such a good question, because I'll be with somebody, whether it's in virtual or in person. And when there's this mental tiredness, there's nothing can happen. That's one aspect. The second thing, if the person is emotionally not able to deal with this, she will need to put it aside. So all the things that she's not willing to deal with, she puts it aside. Which in a way, when you think about it, that's sad, but she's just not able to deal with this. And other things are like, you know what? Go, let's put a timer, because I love the timer concept. And let's just declutter and get rid of things that we're just not going to use anymore. It's just not worth it. That was a memory from the past. It's just, that's it. Let's get rid of it or shred it or whatever, or
Hey,
donate.
do you make a suggestion to people? Let's use this as a metaphor that they've got 10 stuffed animals that represent some different part of their lives. And if they get down and they keep two, and using your example here, maybe those two memories are things that they still have things to work out. Do you help them recognize that those are unresolved issues that they might think about addressing? Do you get into
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What does that look like?
Another great question, because I had a client not too long ago, and she found these stuffed animals. Actually, it was literally what you're saying. It's like you read my mind. And so she found these stuffed animals, but they had this very strong emotional component. It brought her back in the past, but she did not remember she had those. She did not remember. It's when she saw them, it brought back a whole bunch of emotions. You know what actually happened? She slept for a whole week with those stuffed animals. It just, it helped her out to deal with the emotional attachment to these objects. Because I can sit with the person and say, oh, maybe you have unresolved issues with that, but she needs, by herself and for herself, she needs to deal with it. She absolutely need to deal with it. And so that's what she did. And she actually ended up getting rid of all of them, because it made her really emotional, and it brought her back in the past, and she cried a lot. That was her experience. And I respect that. And she said, oh my God, maybe you'll feel like I'm a complete crazy person in her 40s sleeping with her stuffed animals. No, not at all. That's your experience. If that's what you need to do to make a decision afterwards, if you keep them or if you let them go, because remember, the what you're trying to accomplish is to create your next chapter. So in your next chapter, think about those stuffed animals. Do you want them to be part of your next chapter? Do they have to be part of your next chapter? Or are they a good memory, emotional memory from the past? You need to reconnect with that memory, and then you just let it go and just move on to creating your next chapter. From one person to another, some people maybe they won't be able to get rid of their stuffed animals for 6 months. Maybe in 5 minutes they'll make the decision. So it's just to respect the natural way of taking action of every person, because every person is different.
What's interesting about that, you're getting people to do their own therapy. Uh,
Absolutely.
you're
Absolutely.
what you've done is you haven't pushed them over into anything, but you pointed it out and you let them work through it, which is really brilliant. and they don't need a therapist there to work it out. You've gotten them to the point where they face what they need to work out. It sounds like,
Absolutely.
and it sounds
Absolutely.
like you've done it with minimal conversation. They've exposed it, you through this. So this clutter potentially is just a trigger for all kinds of therapy, self-therapy, you might say, and meditation maybe, that would
Hmm.
help you become happier.
Absolutely. Because you see, Rob, and that's a really good point you're bringing here. And I'll say this, there's a reason why we purchased objects. And the reason why I say that is a few days ago, there's a short video that popped up on my YouTube channel, and this lady has nothing. And when I say nothing, she has no couch. She can unpack her car in 15 minutes and move out and move into a new apartment in literally 15 minutes. She's got nothing. And so she feels very at peace. It works for her. She feels very at peace. Everything she owns, she knows. And objects for her are just objects. They don't represent an emotional attachment or anything. And think about, and myself and everybody who's going to be watching this, let's look at all the things that we purchased over our lives, or maybe somebody gave us a gift and we keep those things. Are these things just objects, or are they an emotional attachment, or maybe something that we have not expressed? Maybe something represents sadness, or maybe something makes me really angry and I just keep it, but I'm not using it. I'll never use it, but I just keep it. I hold on to it.
It's a great point. That reflects what the guys who were the minimalists, and they did a documentary on minimalism. It was either minimalism or the minimalists or something. And these are two guys that became really well known for getting rid of their stuff and going around, and they wrote a book about it, an edition, and they went out on tour and they were talking about it. And it was interesting that they would would not get a lot of people to their book. They're talking about reducing stuff and minimalism. It's like people don't want to face all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And what these guys were saying is, look, your life is so much easier if you have one jacket and you have one bag. And then, like you're saying about this woman, they can pack and go on a trip in 10 minutes because the stuff they know what they need, their toothbrush, the toothpaste, etc. And they know what they need, and they don't have more than they need. And I love to read books, so it's self-evident here. But I admire and I like the idea of being light, right? Being able to travel light and fast. And I think that the mistake that people could have in mind listening to what you talk about with clutter is that they have to get rid of things that mean something to them. And I don't think that's the same thing that we're talking about here. You get rid of the overabundance of things, the things that don't mean anything anymore. And you sort through and to what extent do you think it's a maturing process?
I feel that throughout our lives, we are always creating our next chapter. We're constantly moving on to our next idea or next life experience or next beautiful beginning, next life chapter. So I feel that every time there's a new transition, which is normal and it's fun, there's everything evolves, everything changes. So every time we change, I feel that it's a perfect occasion to sit down with ourselves and ask, okay, now this change, even if it's a small change, it's a small next chapter, a new small beginning. What am I bringing in this new chapter? Whether it can be a new job or a new apartment, or especially when we move in or we move out, what is it that I want to bring with me? What is it that I really need? Do I hold on to things because I want to be like everybody. I want to be liked by everybody. I want to look like everybody. Or can I just listen to myself and learn to respect myself and decide what is good for me, what is best for me, what is going to make my life lighter and simpler?
Right. I live in South Florida and we're acutely aware of older people because they tend to come down here and retire. It's not all old people by any stretch of the imagination, but all of us have parents who are getting no younger, and all of us have had grandparents or family members who have gotten older. And one of the hardest things that they all have is to reduce their material goods and they downsize. And every single person that I've talked to, who I've been close to, has found it ultimately rewarding, but very difficult because these are, as you've said several times here, these are memories. It's not just physical things. And sometimes it's photographs, and sometimes it's stuffed animals, and sometimes it's the chair that Jimmy first sat in when he was born and after he could walk. And you have all these memories. Very difficult. Do you have advice for people who are older who are downsizing and older people tend to downsize 2 or 3 times. They downsize maybe from a big house to a small house. And then they downsize from a house to assisted living in the United States, particularly, and maybe in Canada too. And then they downsize maybe to a room. By that time, you're lucky if you've got a box full of your possessions. So you've lost a lot. What advice do you have for people that really are forced to get rid of their stuff about themselves?
That's a really good question. I would say because by being forced to to get rid of things, it's like, oh, creating a new chapter. So I would say that to get like an accountability partner, to get a partner who's going to do the work with you if it's too overwhelming. And also, before that happens, before getting that partner or considering to get an accountability partner, like a guide to help you through that process, I would want to ask the person what they want to bring with them in that future that's almost next door, that they want to create or that they're forced into creating, how they envision that. And that's often something that I do with clients. I'll ask them to visualize, to envision. What do you see? What do you see? How do you see that? Take the time you need. That can take sometimes hours, days, weeks to do just that portion. And even sometimes I'll have somebody walk through their home and just sit in the middle of one room and say, how do you see that room looking like? You have to get rid of, if you're going to get rid of a lot of things, like most of it in this room, how do you see that room looking? What do you see? What objects do you see to be gone completely? And quite often it's so overwhelming. Sometimes it's one session per room with an accountability partner, like myself, for example.
But you get them to imagine for themselves
Yeah,
that next part, and you give them some time to do that.
yeah, absolutely. It's a very personal time for them with their space and their things. And you got to be respectful of that because it's sometimes it doesn't take 5 minutes. It's not like a marathon. And okay, I'm gonna put a timer this time and we're gonna do this in half an hour. I'm not on a schedule. I am on their schedule.
I have sort of an extreme example of this that is a true story. It had to do with my own uncle, who was, and it has to do with the bridge between life and death in this case. And it also has to do with what we don't know about the other person, what their relationship is to certain objects. So this is now many years ago, decades ago, in fact. And I was in my uncle's room. He had pancreatic cancer. You die very quickly, within usually by 6 to 8 weeks of when you find out. And he was quite pallid, and he hadn't shaved in a long time, and he couldn't really speak. And I don't know where it came from, but I was walking around his room alone. His wife, my aunt, and my cousin were downstairs. And I looked out the window and I could see his canoe. He was a big canoeer and fisherman. And I don't know how it came into my head, but I said, it was so obvious what was happening. I said, "Are you going to take your canoe?" And he looked at me and I said, "Because I hear the fishing is really good there." And he looked, and it was this intense. And I was thinking to myself, what are you doing? And I went over and he was calmer. And I said, would you like some water? And he was taking water by the spoonful. That's how bad his condition was. And my aunt came upstairs and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm giving him water. She said, he doesn't take water from anyone but me. And so the point of the story for our purposes here is that I think when you really help people with what's next, you've created a bridge between you and that person. And you've also helped that person create a bridge to whatever comes next. And I think that's how I've seen you since we first started talking deeply about what you do. And I love that you don't force people, because I would force people. I would be, I'm the oldest of three people, three children, and I would be hitting them. I'm kidding, but and I wouldn't have the patience. And you have the patience, and I think it's a brilliant process that you're developing still. And I think that that's a very important part. Talk to me a little bit about what's changed since you started this for you, because I know you've refined some of your thinking and your approaches. Talk about what happened, how'd that happen?
Very good, very good. Thank you. And I want to thank you for sharing this story with me with your uncle. It's very touching. Thank you. And I like when you say the analogy of the bridge, because ultimately people will build their own bridge. We just walk beside them and look at them building their own bridge to go on the other side and create the next chapter. And we watch them do that. So, to answer your question, over the years, I noticed that a big portion of my work had to go with accountability partnership, because the accountability is a big factor, is a big component of a lot of things in life, decluttering included. And when we have the group effect, we have accountability and we have connection. And these are the two things that I noticed that over time was missing. And that's why last year I started creating these virtual decluttering session. And the first one the first one I put together was 1 hour. It was like a cocktail party. Nobody had a cocktail but me. I was really proud. I was like, look at me, I got my cocktail. They were like, yeah, I've got nothing. Or one person was like, yeah, I got water. Okay, can we start? I was like, oh my God. Okay.
Let's be
So
clear, this is the end of the day, I assume, and not at breakfast or something, right? So just,
exactly.
just for the audience to know that.
Exactly. And but what I saw is that participants who would join these sessions, and even myself, because I would do decluttering work with them, because personally, I'm always decluttering. I'm always doing that, and I really enjoy it. But what I found is that people participants or even clients they will get a lot more into decluttering mode than ever if they have a connection with another person or with a group of people. And also if they have accountability, they will get more things done. And so that's a big that's a big component. And that's really what I found, the accountability and the connection. That's really what I found over time to be the missing link, so to speak. And that evolved. And that's really beautiful. Connection and accountability. So important.
I've sat in on one of those sessions and went through it. And what surprised me is that so many things that we can do. We didn't end up talking about clutter exactly. We talked about things that are an extension of decluttering.
Mm-hmm.
So opportunities that come up and things that
Yes,
happen. So you're automatically moving on to the opportunity that comes because you've decluttered. And then that opens up and but to your point, you've got a relationship with that other person or those other people that are in that group. And it's a
absolutely.
funny little relationship, but you've gone through this and it's probably not something that most people have done before, right? On in your program. They probably haven't been with other people on a call and all gone zooming around their rooms and cleaned up.
Exactly.
It's a very
Exactly.
interesting exercise.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, and you see when I put a timer, it's like, oh my goodness, okay, I got 15 minutes. 15 minutes. But what's funny is that in 15 minutes, you can accomplish so much because you've got other people just like you doing the same thing. It feels almost, oh wow, I really want to get things done. I've got other people just like me in the same decluttering mode, so to speak.
It's
And
almost
it,
like they're depending on you to succeed.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so that's why I often say you can declutter more in 15 minutes than in the last 3 years. I
Yeah.
say that a bit as a joke, but it's not really a joke. No.
So when people, do you also, because I've got a couple of ideas on this that I learned, what do you tell people to do with the clutter? There are a couple of resources that I've found. Do you have some also that can help you get rid of this stuff? Because a lot of stuff that we want to get rid of it doesn't deserve the garbage. It's better than that.
Exactly. That can go from a yard sale to donating to selling. And my recommendation for that, for all these things, is to actually do it as fast as possible. Because if you take too much time donating, you keep all these boxes, all these memories that are still in the back of your mind. Or if you take too much time doing your yard sale or selling, it's just, it's counterproductive. So I would say, yeah, whether it's, yeah, donating or selling or doing a yard sale, whatever, it's to do it as fast as possible and find in your community people who can benefit these objects. And, everybody who's going to watch this have somebody or family in their community who could benefit from those objects.
Oh yeah, and I can share one story with you that
Yes.
I had discovered this group prior, but we did some work here. We were ending up getting all new appliances in the kitchen, everything, stove, oven, refrigerator, and I was damned if we were going to throw it away. And so I reached out. There's this a group called Free Cycle, which I recommend that people find. There's always the Salvation Army, there's always United Way. There are all these groups around. Free Cycles, I like very much because you're giving it away and you say, but I could get some money for it. I tried that too. I tried to put it up on Facebook. The time that it's going to take for somebody to get, or eBay or something, the time it's going to be sitting in your garage until you, and then they want it, and then you got to box it up, and then you got to ship it. And then it's like, how much money did I make for making myself insane? So that was my thought process. So I said, free cycle. I call people up, or actually, you put it up online, put a photograph, a couple photographs, and a description. I had people come within days and to take big things. And then we had workers here who were helping paint, everything else. And the painter is a woman with all the women painters. They were very cool. Took this huge refrigerator that she wanted for her mother. And then the oven went to a woman who wanted to start a baking business. Suddenly, now I'm part of all these other lives. It was a very interesting experience to have people who wanted that. And then the griddle, the stove top somebody took because they had a home for a shelter for homeless people. It was like amazing, amazing what I became part of just by doing that. They were so grateful. I felt embarrassed that I even thought for a minute about getting money for this stuff. It's a great experience to go through that extraction of stuff.
Absolutely. And impacting positively other people. One man's trash, so to speak, is another man's treasure.
Yeah. So there's a very funny sign that was somewhere occurred somewhere, and it said in an old country store, it said, "We buy junk, we sell antiques." That also goes along with it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us, we have an offer that I'm going to put on our on this video, which you shared with me. I'm going to put that on, but can you give us
Absolutely.
a couple of tips to wrap up things that we might look at? How might we might just define what clutter looks like and start maybe with a small goal today?
Absolutely. I would say the first thing I would say is do as little as possible. And I get people laughing at me sometimes. They say, "What? Do as little as possible? Come on, are you for real?" Yes, I'm for real. Absolutely. Do as little as possible. If you're only able to do some visualization for 5 minutes, do it. If you want to declutter, have fun for 10 minutes, do it and then go do something else. And something that I would suggest people, your audience watching this, that maybe start feeling a little overwhelmed in their lives and they're thinking about that the next chapter, the new beginning, the new me that they want to create, the new whatever they're trying to create is to go in where you live in your home and to just walk in your take a walk in your own home and just look at everything that you have. Literally, if you have to open boxes and oh my goodness, I didn't know I had that yet, just close that thing. Just keep on walking, just to look at everything that you have and then start visualizing what you would like your home to look like. Whether you're gonna maybe rent it, for example, or maybe you're gonna sell it, or maybe you want to keep it, but you've got too many things and you want to downsize. Take a walk around your home. Enjoy. Enjoy your home by taking a walk around your home. Make it a home again instead of just a house.
Or a museum.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So
Yeah, I
that would be really my biggest tip. And if you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is feels like it's so overwhelming." Feel so welcome to book this free 20-minute complimentary session with me. And it's not a salesy session. I'm not going to try to sell you a package or try to sell you anything. I'm going to guide you and listen to you and see how I can support you.
That's great. That's a very generous offer,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate it. So I'll put the link down below.
My true
And
pleasure.
I think you've also put your finger on something that is a reason why people don't deal with their clutter, and that's that they assume that they got to do it all in one day.
Mhm.
I got to get rid of all the books that I don't read anymore, and I've got to get all of the papers and the files. I got to do it all today. And you're saying just the opposite. I think that's very smart because you get a taste for it, and you actually
Absolutely.
achieve it. It reminds
Absolutely.
me, since you're in French camp, I'll tell you, I learned the Pimsleur. I use the Pimsleur system, and it's a very good system, and and what they do is they simplify it. They say whatever language you speak, they teach you to say hello, how are you? And
Hmm.
then at the end of the first tape, they say, now, how do you say it in Polish? How do you say it in French? How do you say it in Spanish? And they said, see, you speak the language.
Yes, exactly.
So
There you
they're
go.
encouraging you. They're encouraging you to continue. But the
Exactly.
biggest hurdle is, I don't know that I can do it. You can do it. And that's what we
Absolutely.
come up with too.
Exactly. And it's one small step at a time, one small project at a time. And it doesn't have to be complicated. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves all the time, but a lot of our material possessions are emotional. It's a lot of it is emotional. And once we release all this emotional component, it's also easier to get rid of things and to really move on to what's next in your life, your beautiful future awaiting you.
What a beautiful way to look at it. I love it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, listen, Estelle, it's always a pleasure. I've enjoyed
Thank
this.
you.
You and I will talk again soon, but I appreciate this. And I'll put the link down below for everybody to reach out to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.